All right, welcome back in. I hope you're doing well. It's July 4th weekend, so we're already hearing some fireworks here outside of my studio. Hopefully, that won't interfere with the sound quality too much. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're enjoying the weekend, getting some extra time off, maybe enjoying that with the family or people that you care about. But today we're looking at the Detroit Lions 2020 offseason. We've already looked at the offense. We've already covered the defense. And today I've got one defensive correction to make from the last video. We're going to cover special teams. Not a huge in-depth look. We're just going to take a generic look at the special teams. And at the end, we'll talk about what maybe you could see performance-wise from Detroit this season as they go through the schedule. And who knows, maybe we don't get a season this year. Maybe we get half a season or two-thirds of a season. Nobody knows anything at this point. The NFL is just kind of rolling back the schedule little by little until we can kind of figure this thing out for sure. But assuming that we have a season, these are the things that you could expect out of Detroit in 2020. I want to start with the defense at the cornerback position. This is the CB spot, and it's exactly like I had on the last video. I haven't touched a thing here, but I do want to make a correction, and this really comes from Sport Gamer. Sport Gamer, thank you very much. Picked up on this. I need to play musical chairs with my CBs here for just a minute. Starting off with Jeff Okudah, your draft pick from Ohio State, number 3 overall. He's going to make $6 million this season. You know this. Okudah has the physical talent to perform in the NFL. You know he's got the athleticism. You know he's got the size. Everything is there. The only question you don't know is, can he figure it out and actually step up and do it in the NFL at NFL speed level? So we'll find that out, but I think you have every right to expect that Okudah can step up and be CB1. Maybe not at the start of the season, but at some point during the season, when you draft a guy at number 3 at CB, you hope they can at least step up. Maybe they're not going to be a star in season 1, but at least step up and be solid and just kind of battle it out there at CB1, even when they get handed some tougher assignments. So maybe you won't see him at the start of the season doing all of that, but getting some of those tougher assignments as the season goes on. Now, where I've got to make the switch at is right here with Justin Coleman. I referred to Justin Coleman at being in the CB1 mix at the start of the year in the last defensive video. He is really not going to be doing that. And that Sport Gamer is really the one who pointed that out. Coleman really spent by far the majority of his snaps in 2019 at slot corner. A number of you probably already picked up on that as well. Coleman's going to be the slot corner heading into the start of the season. And I think you have every right to expect that he'll be better at that than Darryl Roberts. Darryl Roberts is a good backup, does provide quality depth. You can count on him to fight and be consistent, but I don't think athletically he's got what Justin Coleman has. Coleman's going to be making $9 million last year, so you hope he can really step up and lock down that starter spot at slot corner. But he spent 75% of his snaps last year at slot corner, and only about 20 or 25% of his snaps at the other corner spots, or even some back there at safety from time to time, depending on what the coverage was and the injuries for that week. But Coleman will be your slot, and Trufant should at some point be CB number 2. Now, Trufant is not a true CB1. He really doesn't have the size, the makeup for that, but he's so experienced. He's so good at playing CB. It's just a natural thing for him, like he was born for it. You may see Trufant have to step up and play some CB1 at the start of the season if Okudah is struggling with some of those tougher assignments. And of course, if that's happening, then you're going to see the Lions play probably even more zone than they would play otherwise, which the whole NFL is playing more zone these days than usual. But you may see the Lions play an extreme amount of zone just to kind of cover until Okudah can grow into that CB1 spot. So that's the adjustment we make. Coleman at slot, Trufant at CB2, Okudah at CB1 should be what you'll see at some point. Thank you very much for that. Excuse me. Special teams. This is a request from T1000. I don't think I've ever covered special teams before on my NFL videos. There's just not a lot to cover there without doing mountains of video work, and so usually we just take the lazy way out and skip them. But I got a request for that, so I'm going to do that. Anytime somebody's kind enough to watch a video and submit a request for more information, I want to try to fill that in if I can. So here it is. Here at kicker with Matt Prater. Prater, I think you can feel good about Prater, right? I mean, how could you not? He's got to be one of the top 10 kickers in football, top 11, if he continues to be this year what he was in years past. Last year, he only missed one extra point out of, I think, 36. I think he still has a very, very long leg. I think he made 54, 55 yards for his long last year, something like that. So he can still kick a long field goal. Consistency wasn't quite as good on field goals as you might would hope for. He was up there around 84, 85%, I think, which still wasn't bad for NFL kickers. And part of that depends on how many 40-yard field goals and 50-yard field goals they're trying to track down. So he could be a little bit more consistent there in the field goal range, but still good at 84, 85%. That still puts him, I think, right there at about number 10 in the league. So when you look at Prater overall, for $3.9 million, that's a good solid value. You're not overpaying for Prater. If you were to try to say that you were overpaying for Prater, you're not overpaying by much. You really can't save much money on kickers and punters. You can save a little bit. We'll look at that punter in just a second. You can't save much on kickers and punters to really make a huge difference. But for Prater here, I think you feel very good about him with handling those kicking duties, the extra points, the field goals, and even long field goals. You feel good about Prater. And he's been in the big games before. So if you find yourself in the playoff game this year and you need a big kick from Prater, you're not going to feel bad about him stepping up and doing that. Good value there, $3.9 million. You said goodbye to Sam Martin. Let's talk about Sam Martin for a minute. I know when I say Sam Martin, some of you guys want to go bang your head against the wall, and others of you are like, man, I really miss that guy. We need that guy back. And the truth is that Martin was a mixed bag. There were times he was inconsistent. There were certain plays where you really, really hoped he would step up. He didn't. But statistically, he's been one of the best punters in the league for a very long time. And I don't know that he was ever elite. It's been a few years since you can put him kind of up there in the elite category. But statistically, he has performed very well for a very long time. 2018 was a real struggle for him. He bounced back in 2019 from a statistical standpoint. But even so, you could see in 18 and 19, even though 18 was struggles and 19 was good with a couple of inconsistencies, you could see that Sam Martin was not producing at the same level that he was back, say, in 15 and 16 and 17. You could see a bit of a drop-off there, no matter which season you wanted to pull it out of. So it didn't feel like the Lions tried too hard to keep him, did it? I know they offered him a contract, but it really didn't seem like they were trying too hard to keep him. And so I feel like they probably felt the same way as the fans do, is that, well, we would kind of sort of like to keep Martin, but we're not going to be too overly sad if he goes. And so Sam Martin goes to Denver. He would have been making about $2.3 million this season, maybe a little less, a little more, depending on what the contract would have been to keep him and how many years you signed him to. He's still got some mileage left. I don't think Denver's going to be unhappy to get him. I think they're going to be glad to have him there in Denver. I think he's going to perform well. But here in Detroit, I don't know that you're going to be overly sad to have lost him. Now, can you find a better punter? Yeah, you can. Can you find a worse punter? Absolutely. So who have you got to replace Sam Martin? You've got Aaron Siposs, and Jack Fox. These guys have never kicked a punt before in an NFL game. So you probably shouldn't expect either one of these guys to just blow it out of the air this year, right? I mean, you couldn't possibly expect them statistically to do what Martin has done for several seasons, but you can at least hope that they're consistent, that every game that you call on them to punt, they're consistent and they produce. And then, as with all younger guys, you hope that in 21 and 22 and 23 that they just continue to get better. So that's what you can hope for. Now, they're only making $600,000 each, a little bit more than that. So you actually save about $1.5 million, which the Lions have already used elsewhere on the roster. So you're saving about $1.5 million, and these two guys should be, you hope, competitive for the job and get some consistency out of there. Now, I haven't looked at any videos on these guys, hardly at all. I couldn't tell you who I think is going to win the job. I just don't have that kind of time to invest in special teams punters who weren't even drafted. But you at least hope one of these guys can step up and provide some level of consistency. But I really wouldn't expect them to be what Sam Martin has been for several years, at least not this year, maybe in 21 and 22. Kick returner, punt returner with Agnew. Agnew had a very good year last year. Didn't really return that many punts or kicks. I think he was down below 20 in both categories. I lose track of one of the categories, but in any case, he wasn't among the league leaders as far as how many kicks he did return, but statistically, he was very good. He was in the top 10 in both categories, of kick return yardage and punt return yardage for the averages. His averages were outstanding. So he had a very good year. And there's probably 2/3 of the NFL who do not have a kick returner or punt returner who is as good as Agnew. So if you're Detroit, I think you feel very good here about kicker and about kick returner, punt returner. In both cases, I think you have to feel very good about what these guys can do. You can find a better kicker in the NFL than Prater, but teams who have a better kicker probably for the most part do not have a kick returner or punt returner who's anywhere near as good as what Agnew is, and vice versa. You can probably find a more elite speed guy than Agnew, but you're not going to find on that same football team a kicker who's as good and consistent as Prater. So you have a good combination there. Both these guys produced. Both of them were in the top 10 last year, and that's, I think, about the most you can expect out of your special teams. You just want your punter to step up and produce. The rest of special teams is all about two things: coaching and effort. The special teams guys usually are not the most athletic on the team. Those guys usually play wide receiver and CB and edge rusher and linebacker and all the other spots, right? But when you get to special teams, the guys who make it are the guys who have massive heart, massive workout ethics. I mean, they just grind all day long, and that's how they catch on to a job in the NFL. So when you look at the rest of the special team spots, it comes down, I think, to coaching and to effort. Now, you're switching coaches again at special teams this year. John Bonamego was your coach last year for special teams, and he only got one season, and he was part of the group of coaches who were asked to leave Detroit back in January or February, whenever they were all asked to go. And, when you look at special teams for Detroit last year, you can point to something here and there that you didn't like. You'd say, well, this was something that they were doing that I really didn't like. But keep this in mind. They were good at special teams last year. When you look at all the statistics, the overall efficiency, they were in the top 10. Kicker, good. Punter, mixed bag. Kick returner, punt returner, good. The coverage units were decent. I didn't really see any huge reason to let Bonamego go. Now, I also haven't watched every game, and you guys did last year, so you feel free to let me know how you feel about that, letting the special teams coach go. It kind of sort of felt like somebody just needed to pay a price for the bad season that Detroit had last year. So we let go of our secondary coaches, and we let go of our strength and conditioning coach, and we let go of the special teams guy, hopefully just to kind of pacify the owners or whoever is breathing down our necks about the performance from 2019 and save our jobs. It's kind of what it felt like. So when you looked at Bonamego, they were bad on special teams in 2018, but he wasn't a part of that. And the Detroit Lions have actually been pretty good on special teams for years. Never elite, but always usually for the most part, not in 18, but for the other seasons, the past few seasons, pretty consistent. And now here they are with the third different special teams coach in 3 seasons. And Bonamego is asked to go. The Rams swoop him up very quickly. He's now special teams coordinator for the Rams. And in comes Braden Coombs. Now, Coombs had the number 2 special teams overall in the NFL when you looked at efficiency last year for the Cincinnati Bengals. And that sounds great, but when you start looking at the Bengals special teams for 2018, for 17, for 16, for 15, when Braden Coombs was still the coordinator there, Happy July the 4th, if you can hear the fireworks. When you look at Braden Coombs being the coordinator for all those seasons, you start to ask the question, they were very good in special teams. The Bengals weren't in those years. When you look back at those previous seasons, so yes, they were good in 19, number 2 overall in the overall efficiency categories. But you start to ask yourself, why did we make the switch? And are we actually better? I really don't know. You guys can tell me how you feel about Braden Coombs coming in and Bonamego being let go. I think either way, no matter who was going to be the coach of special teams this year, you're going to be fine because, like I said, you've got Prater at kicker, you have Agnew here with 2 spots, and then you have a couple of guys competing at punter, so I don't think you're going to be in bad shape at punter. I think you're going to be decent at special teams. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't once again be in the top 12, top 13 of the league in special teams overall, and we'll see what kind of a job Braden Coombs can do. I don't have any reason to doubt him. I was just really questioning the switch and why letting go of Bonamego. You guys can let me know if you know something there that I don't. That really comes from T1000. T1000, I hope that's enough. I know that's not super in-depth. That's what we're covering. Now, what can you look for the Detroit Lions in 2020? If we get the playoff season, how good should they be? And my feeling is this. I think Detroit has every right to expect that they could possibly be in the playoffs. I think they're just right there in the mix. I don't think you have any reason to take a back seat to Minnesota or Chicago this year. Are you just going to push those teams around or be heavy favorites against Minnesota or Chicago? I don't think so. There's enough talent on those two rosters to beat you, but I don't think you have any reason to think that you can't win those games against Minnesota and Chicago and compete in the standings or even be higher in the standings than the Vikings and the Bears. And of course, that leaves the Packers. And of course, a lot of people are going to be pointing to Aaron Rodgers. And the Packers made the NFC title game last year. But when we really start to look at it, I was so surprised that the Packers made the NFC title game last year. I don't want to say surprised. I was surprised a little bit that they got as far as they got, that they had a good record as they had. Now, credit to them. They figured out a way to make it work, and they did. But when you looked at their personnel, when you look at them statistically, they really did not look like one of the top 4 teams in the NFL last year, except for their record. Their record was outstanding, but statistically, they just didn't look like a top team in the NFL last year. My feeling is, even though you still got Rodgers there at quarterback, they're going to take a step back toward the rest of the NFC and specifically toward the rest of that division. And so I think if you're Detroit, I don't think you have any reason to feel like you can't compete with Packers, and certainly not the Bears or the Vikings. So I think if you're Detroit, I think you're right there in the mix. I could see Detroit going 9-7. It wouldn't surprise me. Would I pick them to go 9-7? Probably not. I probably pick Detroit to go 8-8, and I could see them going higher than that to 9-7. If everything worked out great, if everything fell into place, I could see them going 10-6. That's kind of the upper reaches of what I think you would see out of Detroit. I think that would be a good season. 10-6, win the division, get a home playoff game. I think that's the upper reaches of what Detroit could be doing. Maybe pick up a playoff win. That would be a high success for Detroit based on the roster that they've got this year. What's the low end? I could really see them being the reverse, as low as 6-10. I think the defense is going to be more consistent. I think the offense, of course, is going to be way better as long as Stafford is healthy. You've got all the parts there to have a very good offense this year, a top 10 kind of an offense, maybe even a top 8 kind of an offense if it all starts to fit together like it did last year. So I think you've got every reason to expect we're just right there in the mix with the Packers. I think a shade better than the Bears and the Vikings. But all those games are going to be competitive. I don't think anybody's just going to run away with that division. I think the Packers come back down to earth a little bit. Please don't hate me, Packers fans. It's just the way I feel based on what I've seen. So I think it's what you can expect from Detroit all year long. I think they're going to be hovering around 500, and you hope, if you're a Lions fan, to see them on the positive side of that 500 and actually pick up the division. I think you have a chance to do that. I think it's a real chance. Who would I pick between the Lions and the Packers? I'm still not sure. It's kind of hard to pick against Aaron Rodgers if you have Matthew Stafford, right? I mean, that's kind of a hard deal to make. But the rest of the roster, I think you're competitive. I think you're right there. And Stafford's a good quarterback who moves the football up and down the field, so he keeps you in all those games. So it's really just going to come down to, and by the way, that's how a lot of the NFC is this year. There are several teams who are just right around that 500 mark, and they're going to be fighting each other all year long, I think, in the NFC for those playoff spots. I think you have a couple of teams who are kind of up ahead of everybody else, and I think everybody else is just right around 9 wins, 8 wins, and 7 wins. I think there's a whole cluster right there, and the Lions are one of those teams. So if you get a couple of breaks, if everything comes together, I think the Lions have a good chance at making the playoffs this year. I think that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Happy July the 4th. Hope to see you next time. Have a great one. Goodbye.